Autumn Brown, a queer science fiction writer, a theologian, a mother of dragons, and a healing justice facilitator for social movements, living on Dakota and Anishinaabe land, currently known as Minneapolis.
And I am Adrienne Marie Brown, a writer, student of miracles and love, emergent strategist, and pleasure activist living on Anishinaabe territory, currently known as Detroit.
And this is How to Survive the End of the World.
Our podcast about learning from apocalypse with grace, rigor, and curiosity. And I'm so excited about what's happening today because we have on someone who I've been a fan of big time for quite some time. And I'm going to introduce her, but I wanted to give a little context for this. So last season, Autumn and I had a conversation about being Black mixed people, co-hosting this podcast and being in the world and being facilitators and organizers, etc. And we asked people, do you want more of this? Because generally we talk about survival out as an external thing and not so much about like, here's our identities inside of it. And there's a part of that that feels really tied into what it means to move into surviving this apocalypse, because it's a white supremacist capitalist apocalypse. So people said they wanted to hear more about this. They wanted more authentic explorations of this space. So when this book came out that we're about to talk about was re-released, I was like, this, I think, could give people a number of different lenses into this conversation. And everything this person says is brilliant. And so we have today Yaba Blay on our show officially, the one and only. And I want to say my first experience of you that I was like, oh, so you started Professional Black Girl. You are this like exquisite, brilliant race scholar.
Mm-hmm.
I think of you as a pleasure activist and someone who's uplifting joy, Black joy all the time. But then you also do this thing called Judgment Free Zone, which definitely listeners here have heard me talk about as a major survival mechanism for me, where you take the best of the entire internet and offer it to people on Instagram if we don't get on your nerves. Basically, it's like, if we are not too annoying, we earn Judgment Free Zone. You're also besties now with Brene Brown. You love onesies. There's so much about you that I feel like people just need to understand how fantastic you are. So Yaba Blay, we wanted to welcome you to our show. Is there anything that you want to make sure people know about you just on an introduction level before we move into combo?
I want people to know that I was trying very hard not to cackle in my microphone as you were doing that introduction. But no, thank you, Adrienne. I'm happy to be here.
We are so grateful to have you. Thank you for being with us. So, we always start our shows with just a little bit of a check-in. How are we finding you today? And we'd love to hear from you first, Yaba. How are we finding you today? How you doing?
Today, I am doing okay, and okay is okay with me. I've been really busy here lately, but I'm not stressed, which is not usual for me. So I'm celebrating that. More recently, when folks ask me how I'm doing, I tend to answer, keeping hope alive. So I'm keeping hope alive, but I'm good. Thank you. How y'all doing?
Yeah, thank you. Well, I can go next. This is Autumn. And I resonate with the noticing when you're not stressed, busy but not stressed. I have found myself recently answering the question with I'm pandemic good, and one of the things I'm noticing just in terms of how I'm doing is because of the constraints of pandemic life, I have very little cause to rush anymore, to be rushing anywhere or trying to multitask, doing multiple things as I'm in transit from one place to another place, because I'm so rarely in transit. And what this has meant is that if I do have to rush, I really don't know how to do it. It's amazing how quickly the skill of rushing elegantly just leaves the system. So I've had lots of spills lately. If I'm having to rush in any way at all, eventually I drop something, but it feels good. It actually feels like a good thing to be I cannot rush anymore. I do not know how. And so I actually just shouldn't. I will not anymore. But it's good. It's good to feel the slowness in my life after so many years of feeling like I just was trying to fit 24 hours into 16. Mm-hmm. Adrienne, how are you doing?
I feel already a little calmer hearing both of you. I've been in like a little major, not a little, like a major interview moment where it's just like one interview after another. We're in this window of Octavia Butler's passing. So she passed away 15 years ago. And so there's just been more conversations with and around and about her work. And I've just been steeped in those, and it's been beautiful. And but it's been a lot of thinking, a lot of like grief, the way I just think about like what would it be like if she was still here. So I've been in some of that. And I am working on my first novella, and I am so excited. I just got like, my here's 2-week deadline for the next draft to be in. So I'm like, okay, off the internet, close everything. Anything that's not the novella is not now, and it's so thrilling. It's so thrilling. Like, this feels like the dream come true. And I think you all know this as writers. It's just those moments where it's like, okay, this is your dream, but now it's actually due. And
now you have to do it.
Now you have to write that. So there's so many feelings that bubble up with that. And I'm enjoying all those feelings. Yeah, so that's me.
Beautiful.
And I think we can move into our flume of rage here.
Petty, angry.
Flume of rage, flume of rage, flume of rage, flume of rage.
One of the things I feel like is a perpetual condition right now is like, oh, there's so much to be frustrated about, angry about, upset about. And there's also a lot of good. There's a ton of beauty. I was thinking about like so many people are releasing books that I'm so excited are out, and like all this stuff, I'm like your book, Yaba, which we're going to be talking about all day today. But I was also like, yeah, and Sonia Renee Taylor's book is, all these books are going on the New York Times. Everything's, it's just like so much is moving. It's Miriam Kaba's book just hit the New York Times. Like there's like all these people that, we're in community and look up to. And it's like, this is a beautiful time, a lot of growth, a lot of skill, a lot of sharing is happening. So the thing I had to like reach, I was like, what am I upset about right now? Because there's really not that much.
Reach for it.
And the thing that came to mind was I saw this video yesterday about Mumia contracting COVID in prison. Mm-hmm. And, for folks who have followed Mumia Abu-Jamal is a political prisoner, incredible writer, incredible thinker, has offered so much to us, visionary, and has done, for many of us, our entire knowledge of that has been during his time behind bars. Yeah. And they have just been organizing for him to be out of prison for years, especially because he's had Hep C and it's been really impacting his health. He can't get the care that he needs in that space. So there's incredible calls for how to support him getting out of prison, especially right now. Him having COVID with his pre-existing condition, in those conditions, it's just a really bad recipe. So there's calls for action, to make phone calls, to put pressure for his release. And we can include those in our show notes. But I'm also just, it infuriates me how the prison industrial complex can value people's lives and keep them from the care that they need, and how during this period of COVID, we have not been able to like move the needle on this and just get people out of those dangerous conditions. So yeah, when I really drop into that, it makes me furious. That's my rage today. What y'all got? Anything? It could be heavier, it can be lighter, rage can be in a lot of places, but.
Well, now I'm rethinking because that just annoyed me. I think that's high on the scale of rage, right? Mine may not be as high on the scale, but as I'm thinking about it, we're in what the world is calling Women's History Month. We just got passed through Black History Month, and given the heightened wokeness that emerged during quarantine. I wasn't looking forward to Black History Month because I thought that folks were going to be extra, and they weren't, which was surprising. I think the thing that, if we're talking about annoyances, what annoyed me is that Black History Month comes every single year. We know it's February every single year. And this year, more than any other year, people were raggedy, meaning that they reached out on January 28th to announce that they're having a Black History program and can I be your keynote speaker? Right?
No.
Like you knew Black History Month was coming. And then I've seen it with Women's History Month. So I'm on the one hand, I'm thankful because we've all been trying to figure out how we're going to get through, for those of us who are independent contractors, through quarantine, not being able to get on trains, planes, automobiles, and speak and such. So thankful, but also don't do that. How can we just be a little bit more prepared, to show that you value the very thing that you claim to be wanting to do? If you want someone to be your keynote, bring them in early on in the planning to see if you can get on their schedule. And then B, don't also tell them that you don't have any money.
Ah!
Not only am I late and raggedy, but I would love if you could do this for free. For whatever. And again, it's not about the money. It is about the money, but it's not like here's the scale and you don't reach it. But also like, if you know you're raggedy, make up for it by saying, I'm so sorry for being late, but here you go. Here's a little $20,000 for your effort.
Exactly. The raggedy tax.
Yeah. So that's what's just been annoying me, because people are still planning Women's History Month and we are well into March. That's all.
Oh my. Yes, it's like, you better be offering me 20,000. Better be offering me 20,000.
And they're not.
They're not. Yeah. The free requests, the requests for free. My favorite is when the request for free comes after the excitement has built. Where it's like, ooh, we're having an exchange. Ooh, this sounds so exciting. Ooh, and then but you want it. Oh, you didn't even know? Okay. That is the worst. I guess I can close us out on the flume by looping back to the issue of healthcare. I saw a meme on the internet in one of my rare moments of seeing memes, which was someone posting it was an image of this mock-up of a space hotel announcement about the space hotel that's supposed to be ready by 2027. And then the person who posted it was like, we literally just want healthcare.
And that thing's so hard because that was also on my flume list. And I'm just like, girl, that hotel.
It's the hotel, the space hotel, but just the blatant, it's these moments to me that's like the sort of the blatant disregard for meeting basic human needs, or blatant disregard for the very idea that we would first orient to meeting people's basic needs prior to doing things that are at that scale, and that scale of luxury, that scale of waste. Because I really do think, like, what could be more wasteful than going to space just to be there? I think if it was a hotel on the way to Mars, where we have a whole other, civilization that we've created over there, that makes sense to me. But just flying up into space to be like, here we are in space. Right. It's so great. That is the definition of waste. Just think of the fuel involved. So that's outrageous. My flume. And I say that as someone who really genuinely loves the idea of space exploration. Like, I'm a Star Trek fan. I am not against space exploration. I am against space hotels that are not a point on a destination.
Wasteful space experience.
Wasteful space experiences.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's great. Thank you all. I every time I'm like, I don't know what I'm meant to be. And then once I get it off my chest, I'm like, nope, that's better. That is better.
Yes. Feel the freedom.
So let's shift into interview mode. We have lots of questions for you.
Okay.
And yeah, excited. Just excited. First of all, we have our books with us. And
Yay.
I'm like, oh, our listeners can't see this, but we're just both sitting
They
here
can't,
with our
but we're
one drop books.
cheesing with our books.
Exactly. This book is so gorgeous. Thank you so much for making this and making it again.
Yeah. Yeah. And we wanted to start by especially since, many of our listeners will not have had a chance to see or read One Drop, which is to be both seen and read. I'm wondering if you can just start by telling us about this book, what inspired the original conception and release of the book in 2013, and then also what inspired you to re-release it.
Mm-hmm. So the book, it's interesting. I didn't start out to create a book. I thought that I would be creating a digital project. I'm a very visual person and and a visual learner, right? So a lot of what makes things hit home for me is being able to connect it to some visual manifestation of it. And so it's really a conversation about race in general, but specifically about Blackness. And so my background is in Black studies. My area of so-called expertise is colorism and skin color politics and body politics, particularly for Black women and girls. So lots about skin color and hair texture and how we're seen in the world, right? How we make meaning of our own bodies in the world. And by the world, I mean white supremacists, patriarchy.
Amongst the white supremacists.
What I'm saying. So that's the general, that's who I am in terms of what I do, right? It's what I've been doing. And then I had this moment in 2010 where I was asked to be on a panel for the Caribbean Cultural Center in New York City to talk about colorism in the diaspora, right? On the panel, this is the first time I'm meeting this woman, and she keeps self-identifying as a Black Puerto Rican woman from the South Bronx. And the person I was seeing and those words that she was saying weren't aligning. And I was on that panel distracted the whole time because I'm trying to figure out how it was that she came to identify as a Black Puerto Rican woman from the South Bronx. This is Rosa Clemente, who I'm speaking of. And if y'all are familiar with Rosa, y'all know that Rosa.
Oh, yeah, I know Rosa.
Yeah, Rosa.
Yes.
Rosa always has something to say. She doesn't mince words. So give that energy to a panel. And we're talking about colorism. And I'm sitting there like, but wait, she said that she's Black Puerto Rican. Trying to understand how this works because, again, and I'm all over the place, but I know it will connect for us at some point.
Yeah, take us there.
So much of identity, right? Who we are is like who we are announcing ourselves to the world to be, right? I grew up in New Orleans, the daughter of immigrants. I'm first generation Ghanaian. I'm very dark skinned. I grew up in New Orleans, which has a long history of colorism and identity politics, with folks who I self-identify as Creole. So I knew that I was dark skinned probably before I knew how to spell my own middle name, right? It was always at the forefront of who I was, no question whatsoever. And New Orleans doesn't have a large Latinx community. So I didn't start meeting quote unquote Puerto Ricans until I moved quote unquote up north, And in meeting Puerto Ricans, they were Puerto Rican, right? They said, I'm Puerto Rican. Nobody said I'm a white Puerto Rican. I'm a Black Puerto Rican, right? I'm a Puerto Rican. So it just reminds me that a lot of times our constructions and conceptions of race, we have our own boxes, like there are boxes that the census gives us, and then we have our own boxes. So if someone says, I'm Black, I'm white, I'm Puerto Rican, I'm Dominican, like Puerto Rican and Dominican are their own boxes. The census gives us Latinx, but Puerto Rican and Dominican, right? For the people themselves, they're their own boxes. So all that to say, I'm on this panel. I've never met anybody who self-identified as Black Puerto Rican. And if I'm completely honest, there was a space in myself in that moment where I was literally asking, why would you do that? Right? Because in my experience, folks who had the opportunity to identify as something other than Black usually do. Right? So I'm not Black, I'm Creole. I'm not Black, I'm Dominican. I'm not Black, I'm biracial. Insert whatever other language there is. So for you to add Black to Puerto Rican, to me, that's like, you want me to know something about you, right?
Yeah.
You're putting that on your card. You're handing me that card and like, yo, I'm Black. So after the panel, we talked some more and it just got my head spinning, because I was trying to make sense of that experience, not only what she said, but my experience of it in my body, right? With all the work that I had done up until that point. So up until that point, my dissertation is on skin bleaching in Ghana. You know, I'm talking about colorism and confronting white supremacy. I've done work, qualitative research on Creole identity, speaking to a family, intergenerational grandmother, daughter, and granddaughter about their identity as Creole. Like I've been
Wow.
talking about these things, and I had never come in contact with somebody again who could identify as something other than Black, but chose Blackness, right?
Wow.
Doing the work helped me to understand for many folks it's not a choice. Doesn't feel like a choice, right? So I just, I get these bugs, I get these bright ideas, and I'm like, I gotta do something. And that was the moment where I was like, I gotta do something. It also made me start thinking about other experiences that I've had, for better or for worse, checking my own self, um, questioning people's identity, not allowing people to be who they said they are,
Mm-hmm.
putting people, and I won't say boxes, I want to say spaces. You know how you come in the contact with folks, and it's like, you go over there, I'm good
Yep.
with you, but you go over
Away
there.
from me. Away
It
from
was
me.
more like that. And so folks that I come into contact with who, yeah, you look like a variety of things. You say that you're whatever, insert whatever identifier here, and that's cool for you. I don't buy it, but that's cool for you. So you go over there,
Uh-huh.
and just
Uh-huh.
literally revisiting those relationships. Many of them are in the book, So I got this bright idea, and
Wow.
again, it wasn't a book. I just literally, I'm a qualitative researcher. I love being in people's business. I'm also a former therapist. Um, all those things come together in terms of how my right how I get curious about people's business. So I just set out on this mission to talk to more people like Rosa and come to understand how they identify and how they see themselves connected to Blackness when they don't quote unquote look Black, or folks
Yeah.
like me, probably the mainstream as well, probably don't see them as Black, or having had the experience of being asked, what are you, which is probably one of the rudest questions. People are rude in general, but like the idea, I've never asked that question to somebody, but to hear so many people say, it could be in a grocery store and somebody's like, what are you, it's like, why is
Mm-hmm.
that your business, but
Right. Right.
all the folks in the book have been asked, what are you? And so to be constantly put in a position of not only defining, but defending oneself, I've never had that attached to my Blackness. My Blackness was never brought into question because I'm dark skinned,
Right.
right?
Right.
Because of
Right.
my features. Um, so yeah, I mean, that's how I got started.
Wow. Wow.
I really love all of that story, and just want to put a fine point on what inspired the re-release now, because this book was already incredible and out in the world, and I'd seen it, a lot of people had seen it. What made you like, now we need, everybody needs this again,
Yeah,
because
it
it feels so timely.
wasn't me. First, first time around. So in the cycle of things, it started as a bright idea, thought it was going to be a digital project, started a website. Because of social media, got connected with folks from CNN, ended up co-producing Who is Black in America. Agent reached out to me. This would be a dope
Mm-hmm.
book. Did a book proposal. She tried to sell it. All the publishers said no, right? Rejection after
Wow.
rejection after rejection. At the time, they thought it was too expensive because it was full color photography. They literally said people don't read, and people don't spend
Okay.
$40 on a book. Um, so can we do it without pictures? No, we're having a conversation about racial identity based upon appearance. We need full color. Um,
Right.
so me being me, and I've been talking about this some more lately, like confronting my own ego and trying to grow out of a space where I feel like I have to prove people wrong. At the time, my ego was like, all right, bet you said I can't do it. Watch this. Right. So I'm pulling money out of my retirement. I'm doing a Kickstarter. I'm putting
Wow.
money on credit cards. Like I was on a mission. I was going to create a book that you said was not going to be useful. So I printed this book myself, and shout out to my community, my growing community. These folks, feels like a lot of times all I have to do is ask, and when I have the courage to
Yeah.
ask, people support me. And so we made a book, and the book won awards, and the book sold
Mm.
out.
Mm, mm, mm,
And
mm, mm,
so it was
mm.
out of print, and folks were on Amazon selling my $40 book for $900, and folks just kept asking
Oh.
me. When are you going to reprint
Mm-hmm.
it? How do I get a copy of the book? And I'm like, I can send you a PDF. I just didn't have any plan. I had proven my point, and then I was over it. Right.
Right.
And so I didn't have any intentions of like reprinting the book. And so then what had happened is I was a part of the Share the Mic initiative last summer. I was paired with Abby Wambach. Abby, I sent her a copy of the
Oh.
book as a gift,
Mm-hmm.
and she's on Instagram like 90 Boo Boo, showing it to people like I got the book, And so folks are hitting me like, yo, I want a copy, I want a copy. So I was like, all right, let me gauge with folks. If I did the book over, would you get it? What about paperback? And everybody's like, yes, please do it. I'll get a copy. I'll get a copy. So I was thinking like, okay, I'll print it again. At the
Mm-hmm.
time, I have a friend who works in publishing. She's like, you don't have to do that. You don't have to print it again. You should see if a publisher would be down to do it. And I was already in talks with Tanya McKinnon, who's now my agent, because I have thoughts and
Love
dreams.
her.
Yeah, she's so thoughts and dreams of doing a second book. So we were already talking about that. And so I mentioned this to her. She's like, all right, let me see what I can do. Send me your old proposal, send me what you got. And she approached Beacon, and within a week, Beacon had picked it up.
That's
Wow.
glorious. I love every part of that because I remember when you did the Share the Mic and being like, "Ooh, Abby and Glennon are so great,"
Yes,
and because they're great. I
yes.
was like, I watched the whole way that y'all were engaging, and I was just like, this feels so important in the racial discourse to see this kind of learning and exchange, but also friendship.
Yeah.
Just sort of like there's something about like what happens when it's not just like I'm educating white people
Oh,
about
yes.
white
Oh,
things,
yes.
but actually like no, we're building here
Right.
something.
Which actually surprised me about myself.
Uh-huh.
I don't.
I was surprised too because I was like, you don't like white people.
Say that out loud. I don't have patience for a lot of white people. I don't have
Right.
patience for
Right.
conversations about race with white people. Like, what's that book?
Yeah.
And it's like, why I'm not talking about race with white people anymore. Like, I
Mm-hmm.
feel that because it's so
Mm-hmm.
exhausting. And
Yes.
it wasn't an exhausting experience. So
Yeah.
thankful for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to spend more time there, but in a second, because
Okay.
I'm like, I want, there's so much around the book particularly, but then I think there's also like Autumn also spends a lot of time working on and with white people things. And yeah, I have a question for both of y'all in a minute. But first, in this book, One Drop, you lay out the distinctions of mixed Black, American Black, and diasporic Black. And you were just telling us a bit about your own identity. But in terms of those markers, where do you identify? And was it shifted by the research and scholarship that you did around this book?
I identify as diaspora Black.
Uh-huh.
Mm-hmm.
Again, because I'm first generation. And it's interesting, I'm learning more recently, people use that term differently than I do, first generation versus second generation, because I was born in the United States. So some folks might say I'm
Oh.
second generation, but I use first
Oh.
generation to mean that I'm the first generation born in America. But whatever,
Right.
Uh-huh.
is to say that my parents are Ghanaian, I was born here. And so in my mind, I'm Ghanaian. In my DNA, I'm Ghanaian. When I go to Ghana, they're like, you're American.
Right.
And so, I've learned the hard way and I've come to a peaceful place about it. But I think so much of my development has been about trying to prove to Ghanaians that I'm Ghanaian and trying to prove to Americans that I'm also American. And that's also exhausting. So I've made peace with who I am, for myself. So I say diasporic Black, not just because my family is from Ghana, but because of the ways that I conceive of my Blackness. It's that I am connected to all people of African descent in this world.
Right.
Right. So all of y'all my people. And that's how I see myself. And coming up with those categories for the book, it was really just me trying to think of how am I going to organize this book, and how am I going to be able to like break this up a little bit to talk about different experiences. And so that's the best language I came with, up with at the time to put people into sections of the book.
I think it's great.
Yeah, that's so interesting too. Because when I was looking at the book, I was thinking about that, about like, oh, are these categories coming from your research, or is it a way to make the set of stories you're presenting legible? And I think it is. To me, it feels like such a courageous step to take to like put any organization to it, right? because it feels still so fraught. I mean, even inside myself, it feels anytime I make a shift in how I am self-identifying, which, you know, Adrian and I talked about this in the first episode that we did that was more sharing our personal stories, but that, you know, that over time there have been these moments of kind of like over this year of my life, I feel myself shifting in how I am naming myself, how I'm naming myself to the world, like either because there's something I need to put on my card or because there's something that I actually need to make legible to myself now that I've been, you know, kind of like tucking it back.
Yeah. Let me say this before I forget. I'm sorry, I wasn't able to listen to that episode before we're chatting now, but at some point in this conversation, I would love to know how you felt in your bodies as you read the book or as you looked at the pictures.
Yes. Well, and actually we wanted to talk about the pictures next because it is very, I mean, I'm sure that different people, that how one is going to experience a book like this is going to be very different depending on, you know, how around both your own light skinnedness, but also how you experience other people's light skinnedness. And I know that one of the things that Adrian and I navigate as light skinned, mixed race Black people who are working often in multiracial spaces, often around, you know, inflection moments around race, that like you know, our presences as light-skinned people in and of itself that is something we have to contend with, that the room has to contend with, right? And so there's a lot of thoughtfulness we have to bring, but that is a very externalization, you know, or there's an externalized way that is being felt and experienced. It's about like how are people responding to me, reacting to me, and what do I need to do in order to ensure that I'm you know, creating as much safety in the container as possible. But it's different to just look at the images, just like me and my body looking at these images. And, you know, and I don't know personally if I even have words to describe it yet, but aside from like, there's a relief and a tenderness and a sadness and a mystery and like a desire, attraction. Like there's a lot of stuff wrapped up in just looking at the pictures. But one of the things that we wanted to ask you about is about the way of experiencing this book as a book of images. That it feels like there's a way that this book is teaching us to see a wider view of ourselves. And one of the things that we were wondering about is if you, like, in putting out a book like this, if part of your hope is that people are literally seeing the world differently after reading it or after looking at it. Like, are you hoping to really change the way that people are viewing the world around them? And also, you know, I mean, I think you started speaking to this already, that this process also produced quite a shift in you in terms of how you how you view and understand people and let them self-define. But would love to hear more about how creating this work changed the way you are like moving through the world and looking at the world.
Yeah, I think creating this work and having this process of, you know, not only having these interviews and conversations with folks, but then also, you know, a lot of these interviews took place on the phone. Right? Folks would connect us and say, you should talk to so-and-so. We'd have a little pre-conversation. We do the interview by phone. I did many in person, but most by phone. And then also scheduling a time to create a portrait. And Noelle and I are trucking out in the world with, you know, her equipment, and then we're on set taking pictures. And the thing that I loved about working with Noelle, who's also featured in the book, is that in the same way that when I did the Q&A interview, I, you know, had it transcribed, or I transcribed and then created a narrative out of that, and then going back and forth with the contributors and even calling them contributors, right? That I wanted to make sure they knew that I was not printing anything unless they said, this is my story, right? Same with the photo shoots. We didn't say, we're meeting here, wear this, you know, this is how we're creating the portraits. It was, where do you want to meet? Where would you want to wear? Want to wear makeup? Don't want to wear? It's your portrait. And so watching her co-create their images with them as well, it's just a really beautiful process. And so adding that to the interviews, I really felt like I got to know them that they wanted to share with the world. There's a part in the book where I say, that maybe if we see Blackness differently, that we'll see Blackness differently, right? That if we had those pictures, right, and connect it, because there's so many people who tell me I'm reading a story a day, or I got stuck at this story. I had moments even when the book was re-released where I'm like reading the story and then looking at the picture. You're reading the story and then you're looking at the picture. It's like, how do these words align with this body that I'm looking at, And so I know that that's the shift, because if I did not allow myself to be open to receiving their stories and only move through the world with my experience of being dark-skinned growing up in New Orleans, and how my interaction with, and not all Creoles, right? But with particular Creoles in my upbringing, if I said everybody that looks like that, everybody that has hair like that, identifies like that, and therefore treats me like this, then that means every time I would come across somebody who even remotely looked like one, I would project and assume that that's who they are and be closed to that. Because how else do I protect myself from rampant colorists? How else do I protect myself from someone saying some, hateful, hurtful shit to me? I can't go over there. Stay away from me. I don't fool with you. And so I had to allow myself to be open to hearing their stories and the ways that they presented it. And so, the book is a presentation of their truths. And I say that perhaps as a disclaimer, because some of the pushback that I've received over the years from a variety of spaces and places and people is that there's some assumption that either I am bigging up the one drop rule and saying that that's how we should operate, or that I am giving light-skinned folks a pass, or that I'm somehow talking about reverse colorism, if there's such a thing, or that I'm saying that here's the book, it's a fact, this is Blackness, right? All I'm saying is just look, let's see what the people say. How you feel about that? How do we make sense of that? Can you make sense of it? And that's why I was also interested in presenting, like you say, those different sections, So yes, we have folks who are technically mixed biracial, coming from two different, parents of two different backgrounds. We also have folks in the diaspora, multi-general mixing, if that's the word we want to use. But we also have in the American Black section, we've got 2 women with vitiligo and 2 people with albinism. And I'm really just trying to be very literal. When you see someone who looks a particular way, what do you think about their racial identity? Like racial identity, again, when we take it for granted, racial identity is not just what people look like. So the sister in there, Joanne, who has vitiligo, that was my reckoning with my whatever I had with Michael Jackson, when he was alive, because I do work on skin bleaching, people always bring him into the conversation, right? That he's an example of skin bleaching. But I always knew, just based upon the complexion that he became, that's not bleaching. I don't care how much money he has. You can't do that to me.
Nope.
Right? Yeah. Because I know what people who bleach their skin look like. That's a different color altogether, right? Now, again, Michael had so much money. So it's not to say that he wasn't able to speed the process of his vitiligo along in the search for having a uniform complexion. I don't know. I wasn't there, right? But it is to say, Joanne was the first person that I met who said, I have vitiligo. This is what I used to look like. This is what this condition has done to me. And there's a picture of her holding up a picture of what she used to look like. And just to see her complexion compared to what she looked like at that time, like, yeah, that shit sat on me for a long time. So again, if you meet her on the street, she might look white to you. She was born and had 30-something years of a very Black experience. Just because she looks different, you can't take that Blackness away from her. You see what I'm saying? So is Blackness just about what you look like?
Right.
More questions than answers.
More questions than answers.
Oh, yes. I mean, yeah, but I think this is why, to me, this is a really radical book. And you asked the question, how did we feel in our bodies looking in the book? And I want to honor and answer that question, which is, I felt being seen. I felt seen. Like I was just like, oh, these are all people whose stories are Black stories, and they're telling them as Black stories. And however I feel about those stories, this is how they're holding them. And as someone who, I'm like, my story is a Black story. And one of the things about being mixed that is always intriguing to me is I'm like, I don't have a white experience. I have a mixed experience. I have a Black experience, and I don't have a white experience. And I don't have an assumption that there's a positivity associated with the proximity to whiteness, which I think is a lot of how race was structured, and how Blackness particularly was structured, was that it was Blackness is about being as far from whiteness as possible so that we can oppress you and enslave you and put you in your place. And so any proximity to whiteness is still constantly being searched for, like, how can I put you in your place? And I think that those who are light skinned and who have had to move in those white spaces really know this intimately, how violent it is to be in that space. And I saw that on so many of the stories, is people are like, you assume that being light skinned is like, oh, I walk in the door and white people just like, yes, girl, you're one of us. And it's like, that never, ever, ever, ever happens. Instead, even when there's a smile on the face, you're constantly put in your place in some way, perform for us, dance for us, do what we want you to do. So,
and I wouldn't have known that. I'm sorry to cut you off, but I think that's what was so powerful and moving for me doing the work. I wouldn't have known that, right? So it's a confrontation for all of us to recognize how much we project meaning onto other people.
Right.
And it's until you actually have a conversation with somebody and allow them to tell you their story that you would even know. Because again, even as I talk about white supremacy now, we talk about an approximation to whiteness giving people privilege. So I'm not denying the privilege at all.
Exactly.
But what does privilege, how do I process privilege in my mind? How do I project privilege onto people? Yes, there's privilege, but like you say, it doesn't mean that white folks are throwing flowers at your feet.
Well, and also it's like, if we know the psychological toll that white supremacy in and of itself is taking on white people, right? Which I would argue is like, we are hundreds of years into this project and we can see what it's doing to white people, right? We can see what it's doing to white people based on what they are doing to our planet, right? Like, you can't argue that it's that in the big long term of this, you can't argue that white supremacy is been good for white people either. No. And so then it's like this, I think it's like we have this really false sense of what it means to have privilege inside this system, because it's like, okay, yeah, privilege as we get closer and closer to something that is killing us. Right?
Yes.
Yes.
That part. And then, and then I think there is this, what you're offering and what I'm so interested in. And I think what Toni Morrison was talking about is like, then how do we decenter that? And what does the conversation look like if whiteness is not the proximity, but the conversation is centered around Blackness? And that's what I felt in this book. It's like, this is a conversation that is started from a dark-skinned Black woman talking about Blackness and looking around and being like, what do I see? What can you all see? What can we all see? In terms of these all being part of Blackness. And it just felt like when you look at those pictures where it's like, this is an old woman, no, it's a young woman or whatever. Like, it's like suddenly something happens with your eyes. I felt like that. And I was really, really impressed, really pleased that you had at least pushed this conversation, because it feels like this is a conversation we need to have if we're truly going to make white supremacy a part of history, as opposed to an ongoing, dogged, a frustrating and violent part of the present. Which brings me to the question I had, which it feels like this is a very spicy, edgy, black and white time, right? Mm-hmm. That like we go through these moments in the pendulum where it's like everyone's like more mixed and then it swings back. It's like, fuck, it's like very, very segregated. And I mean that not at the level of like, the schools stay segregated, the economy stays segregated, but the culture goes back and forth, I think, in these pendulum swings. And it'll be like on TV, you know, we're mixing and there's a mixed culture. We're moving towards mixing. I think the Obama years were kind of like, yeah, we're all doing great, right? Post-racial, everybody's together, it's fine. And right now it feels like we are justifiably furious as Black people because we're like, you know, every move forward pushes us back, and we end up, now we have this very short fuse with white people. And it feels like a smart short fuse that we have with white people. But it also seems like it spills into our community as a tension between us. And this is something I'm really interested in our conversation is, where do you see light-skinned people with Black and African lineage fitting into the fray of this very Black and white polarized time?
Where do I see them?
Yeah.
I think it depends on where they see themselves. I think one thing that doing this project in this way has done for me, for better or for worse, it's almost like if we had had this conversation 28 years ago when I was a young grad student in Black Studies at Temple, and we were all walking around with our dashikis and afros, we might be having a different conversation, right? Like in that time, I might have been the person who would have been fighting you down, Adrian, if you self-identify as mixed. Well, what's mixed, Adrian? What's mixed? You know what I mean? Like trying to force you to say Black, right?
Yeah.
That's exhausting, right? I can't make you be anything or anybody other than who you see yourself to be. I had to learn that, right? Also, Blackness is too beautiful to be forcing anybody to accept it or to claim it if you don't want it. If you don't want it, that's cool. I don't want you either, right? But it becomes that kind of, you know, tension. And there's lots of history behind that. So in this moment, where do folks who are mixed fit in? Okay, moment of honesty. I accept it's not my experience. I don't know what it's like to be faced with particular choices. I don't know what mixed is supposed to communicate in this context, right?
Yeah.
What is it that you want me to know when you use the language of mixed or biracial, for example?
Yeah.
It is a genetic fact, yes, but as you said, there's a white experience, there's a Black experience. We want to somehow position mixed and biracial as like in between.
Yep.
But from what I've learned, for folks who, you know, have parents of two different races, because of the one drop rule, because of the particular insidious history of white supremacy and the historic legacy of like racial codification and definitions, as a mixed race person, you can have a Black experience. You can have a mixed experience, whatever that is. You cannot have a white experience. So are you mixed? Is it the best of both worlds?
Right.
You have access to both. What does it mean to occupy that middle space? I don't know, right?
Yeah.
But I think the last 4 years with the person who was in office, that I think what new for many of us, but what it brought to the fore for so many other people who were choosing to believe that we are the world, was that things are very much still Black and white for a lot of people. They may use different languaging. They might, you know, somehow believe that this is a quote unquote diverse world and so many people and we're all just getting along. But when it comes down to it, we are still in Black and white.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is the thing. So this is where I'm appreciating this so much. I'm like, I feel like this is a conversation I'm always hungry for, is, you know, I feel like when I was younger, you know, I was like, I'm Black, I'm mixed, you know, and my mom, who's white, she was always like, you know, no one else can force you to figure this out. Like, this is going to be something you have to figure out. Like, I can't tell you, I've never been in your experience, and your dad's never been in your experience. Like, you're the only one who's in this, you know, you're going to have to figure this out. And I remember for years, you know, being like, okay, well, I'm figuring out, you know, mixed person, whatever. And then when I got politicized, I was like, I'm Black. It was just very clear for me. I was like, oh, like I'm Black. I'm a Black mixed race person. And the mixed race felt important when I was in Black community, because I feel like if I said I was Black without that, then people would be like, you're forgetting something. You're forgetting some part of your story that feels important to include. Yeah. And, you know, now I feel most comfortable in saying I'm Black. My experience feels like a Black experience, but I also feel this, you know, resurgence of energy around, you know, needing to have more categorization. And I'm interested in it, right? Yeah. Because I think what is behind it is less about the categorization and more about this idea that there is some accountability that light skin and mixed race people have around the space that we take up, around how colorism plays out, how we partner in it, how we are complicit in it or not complicit in it. What are we unlearning inside of the great unlearning, inside of the great claiming? And I feel like there's not enough spaces where it's not like a call out past a conversation moment. There's not a space to be like, yeah, light skin, black skin, dark skin, rich skin, all the skins, people coming together and saying, what does that accountability actually look like? What do dark skin Americans, Black Americans right now wish that light skin and mixed race Americans knew and were practicing?
Well, you know what I'm going to say. I was listening, but I'll tell you that I was struck when you say politicize, because I think that's the ding, 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 ding for me, right? That understanding Blackness as a political identity. And you know, when I had I had a conversation with Glennon Doyle a couple of weeks ago to, you know, promote the book and what have you. And one of the things one of the things
I just have to say, just a shout out to Glennon, that Autumn has heard me, like I read Untamed, and then I would not stop literally badgering Autumn that she needed to read this book by Glennon Doyle. So when
and I'm slow to do things, so it's probably going to be another 5 years before I read it. But truly, it was like this clip, this podcast episode, this person is so amazing. I'm just like, I've never seen you this excited about a white woman. Like, what is happening?
It's very, very rare. It's basically Brene and Glennon. That's it. Yeah. So I'm just like, you've talked to all the white ladies. Anyway,
but the good ones, right? The ones that I think the ones who get it and the ones who are willing.
Or like you said, the ones where it's not work. It's actually like relational.
It absolutely. One of the things that came up in the conversation, I was telling her that a lot of the pushback that I got the first time around was from white mothers of mixed race children, right? Because again, if they thought that I was telling everyone that you're Black no matter what, literally saying, where do I fit in? Right. And so we're talking about your child's identity, and you have now centered yourself. And so you are forcing, like, parenting is a whole nother conversation, right? And I don't have the answers because I've parented a Black child. I don't know what it's like to partner with someone of another race, let alone have a child with one. That seems like a job that folks should prepare themselves for before they give birth, right? But the idea that you are now telling your child who they are, and the language that you give them as an option is either mixed or biracial, right? You don't even tell them that Black is an option for them. Mommy's white, daddy's Black, therefore you're mixed. So then you've got this child growing up not knowing they had access to Blackness, or not knowing that, and that they don't have access to whiteness, right? And they also don't come to learn the history of race in a particular way because you send them to school, and we definitely didn't get it from there, right? And so for some folks that I've spoken to that didn't actually make it to the book for a variety of reasons, like there were no other options, right? In terms of identity development, because this is what their family said. And again, I'm being honest, you know, so don't be mad.
No, I mean, I'm so grateful that you are. And I feel like we are, that, you know, like, I'm like, this is what we need to do. That's why you wrote this book, so we can have honest conversations about these fault lines.
What I was going to say in this honest moment is that when I sit back and look at these experiences, right? I don't know. I just want people to not be delusional about the world that we live in. Like, the we are the world and everybody can get along thing. It lasts until some shit goes down, right? And so if you're not prepared for that reality, then when some shit goes down, you're calling all the Black people you know to apologize. You know, because somehow your mind is blown that this could have even happened, whereas we've always been clear that it's a possibility. I say that to say, when I sit back and watch, and again, it's just my perspective, and I know I'm not seeing everything, but like the ways in which people try to navigate raising mixed race children, I think it's violent to send a child to an all-white environment if they're not white themselves. I think it's violent, even, and maybe more so because it's family. You see what I'm saying? Like, the idea that there's a white family, there's a Black family, you're going to go spend time with your white family, but I'm the only one that's mixed. How does that feel to me to be different in this space, right? Which could be, depending on the family, different if you send me to my all Black family. Again, I'm not saying right, wrong. I'm just observing because I don't think we, and I'm thinking specifically from the perspective of a white mother who would say, what about me? What about your child? Do you think about are we prioritizing family? And we do this in a lot of ways, not just
Yeah.
with this, right? But we prioritize family as the end all be all and something that can't be questioned or negotiated. I have to send my child here because it's family. Even if family is violent,
No.
even if family is unaffirming, So, and again, this is my experience because I know how violent all white spaces have been to me, right? And so I also recognize the potential for that violence for someone who is mixed race, primarily because of so many of the stories that I learned from folks who are mixed race and talking about their white family and talking about the guilt that they had. You know, I use this language because of my mom. I want to make sure my mom is acknowledged in this. And it's like, again, no judgment, but I don't have to acknowledge my parents and how I identify. I'm dark skinned, they're dark skinned, right? But as I think about my identity, yes, I acknowledge myself to be American born Ghanaian, not just because of my parents, because that's my genealogy, that's my legacy, that's my culture, it's my ancestral right? But also, I could be a person who walks around and says, I'm Ghanaian, I'm not Black, right? Because of our limited understandings of Blackness. For me, all this to say, understanding Blackness as a political identity, I know that Blackness is the bigger box. It's the bigger umbrella under which we all fall, right? And it's because I recognize the politics of race, that there's a time for me to say I'm Ghanaian. There's a time for me to acknowledge that I'm Black. And so, again, from where I sit, I wonder for the folks who are saying I'm mixed, I'm biracial, I'm Cablinasian, if they recognize that there's a time to say that, right? It may be a footnote or a highlight to your Blackness. Do you recognize that in a political conversation about racial identity, there's a time to be Black? But if you don't want it, it's fine. But I just wonder if folks recognize, you know what I mean? Racial identity, it's not one or the other.
Yeah, but I love where you're going with this, because I think too that the fact, because what you're speaking to is discernment, right? Like both the sense of the capacity to own our own identities, and then also to be discerning about what language we use depending on context. And I think that it makes so much sense when you think about one, right? Like racial categorization being something that most people experience as being done to them, right? Yeah. And so it's like already there's agency that's been taken from us in that process. And then I think you're absolutely right that for most mixed race, biracial, light skin, people, it's like there's agency taken in multiple ways from us in terms of our ability to self-define, right? And I think that, so I love the invitation to say, like, bring a capacity of discernment. Right? That it's like, there's never going to necessarily be one answer that is always the right answer in every context. And that's okay, because the nature of this, the nature of the construct is that it is so much more complex than the language that we have to hold it, is part of what I'm hearing too. And I think, I mean, it's interesting to hear you saying the piece about, in some, I know the setting in which I need to say I'm Ghanaian, and I know the setting in which I need to say I'm Black. And one of the questions we had for you was about how, like, what a diasporic Black lens can offer to Black folks in America at this time, right? Like what would it mean to be able to bring more of that, like, global diasporic, the sense of that, the wholeness of Blackness, the complexity of Blackness into this political moment that we are in?
Acknowledging, accepting, claiming a diasporic Black identity has been, I don't know, it's probably one of the most beautiful points of, I think, my own racial and cultural identity development, because I don't sit in this space ever accepting the idea that I'm a minority. not, I don't even use that language. I side eye people who do. Like, do you know how many of us there are in this world? Right. And again, whether it be opportunity, resources, privilege, what have you, so many of us don't have the opportunity to actually get up and move out into the world and see the world. Or when we do, we go to resorts and stay there. We don't see where folks actually live, but it's taken me to get up out of my comfort zone and go and explore the world. And there's so many places I want to see, but I talk about all the time, aha moments going to Puerto Rico, aha moments going to Brazil, aha moments going to Mexico, right? Because again, those places as projected through our screens, they don't get aha moment being in Miami, right? Because it's like the images that we get on our screen are very limited, and that's by design. Okay, so the Brazil that we get is not going to let Yaba watching the TV know that there are so many people most of the people in Brazil look like you, sis. All your people in Brazil too, right? The Brazil that comes through the TV is real, more separation, more distance, more, right? Possibility that you actually are a minority, right? Going to Puerto Rico, again, even with the experience that I had with Puerto Ricans, going there and be like, you black like me, and then also not being limited to what we look like, but also there's a heartbeat that we share, how we eat, how we move, how we interact. Like there's so many places in the world that feel like home.
Yeah.
Just because of the vibration that is there, much more so than the United States, because of the vibration that's just at the forefront of how people interact with one another. You know what I'm saying? So for me, recognizing that I am of the diaspora has been so affirming, regardless of whether or not the folks themselves see it, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Wow. Mm-hmm.
Yes, it absolutely does. And I feel deeply the same way. Like one of the things I think is most healing for me as a Black person, and it's something I recommend to Black people all the time, is I'm like, get out of these borders, go anywhere else, and you will see just how prevalent Blackness is and how beautiful Blackness is. And I have found the most healing, to me, healing was landing in both Morocco, where everyone looked like me, everyone. And they were like, are you Berber? Like what? I mean, and I was just like, I've literally never had this experience. I've only ever in my life been in places where everyone looked like something else than me. And suddenly I was in a place where like walking down the street, the facial structures, and it was just like, oh, that's an older mixing, but this is what happens at this border line, right? And I think there is a reminder when we travel outside the US that there is a Blackness that is before whiteness, right? There is something that is before the trauma of white supremacy. We were there. and
not to cut you off, what's also affirming, I just keep coming back to this space, we are still here.
Exactly.
I've been trying for centuries. I've been trying for centuries to take us out.
Exactly.
And we still here.
Exactly.
Still with the same connected vibration all over the world. You picked us up on boats and dropped us off everywhere, and we're still connected. You tried it. You can't win. Exactly. It may seem like you're winning right now.
In the long term,
you cannot win. And that, I mean, it literally, my heart is like bursting open right now, because I'm like, then to return to Black space as a political space, as a spiritual space, as a healing space, as a communal space, and to set down the part that whiteness has marked with, it's like, you will never belong. It's to set that down at the door and be like, look, it might take y'all a while. I'm here. Right. There's something so healing about that too. Because I feel like I'm like, oh, that's the thing. I hear people mix people and mix kids with, like, where do I belong? I don't belong anywhere. Mariah Carey project, right? And it's just like, it's you have to also declare it, right? You have to declare it. Like, this is also what Blackness is in the world, is what you said, declaring I'm not a minority in this world or in any other, and declaring I belong wherever I am. And it's not a question, you know?
And language, you know this, language is so important. Like we have to be so conscious and deliberate about the language that we use. Oftentimes the options are given to us. That is also by design.
Yes.
You will not hear me say third world.
Yes.
You will not hear me say non-white.
That's right.
You will not hear me say minority. Like I'm not using language
yes.
to participate in the system that wants me to somehow delude myself into believing that I'm not enough, that I'm not human, that I don't belong. That's y'all's language.
That's right.
That's part of y'all's mission. I don't have to accept it.
Not
and I don't have to continue, you know, to say it. And that's the kind of critical thinking that I got, you know, training in Black studies, to question everything. And so for me, I'm asking us to just ask all the questions. I'm not trying to come up with a manual how to, this is the answer. I want you to ask more questions because that critical lens will make you rethink and receive so much.
That's right.
Going backwards to move forward.
That's right.
Question all of it. Don't just accept that which we're giving. Race is not a fact. It's not science for us to just take like this.
Literally not.
I need more.
Do we know how this started? Right. Because whiteness is the biggest delusion.
So huge.
They created that shit for a reason.
Yes.
You know, and it's shifted over time. So I'm just trying, again, I'm not asking any of us to memorize history, but at least know certain parts that are really important to this narrative. Whiteness was created.
It was created. Boom. That changes everything. You know, this is, I mean, okay, we do have to transition, but I keep saying like, this is the work I do around imagination, you know, that I'm like, we are living inside of someone else's imagination. And it is a white supremacist, patriarchal, capitalist imagination, but it's still imagination. And so we can counter that. We can have our own understandings, our own ideas. And anyway, you're brilliant. So we're going to shift into our final little segment.
It was not long enough.
We could talk to you forever. I feel like I was like, ooh, I could talk to you for I think we could do a whole season of Yaba Blay.
Please come back.
So maybe next season we'll do that. But
yes,
I want to see who has some culture things. So, you know, do either you have something that's like right on the tip of your tongue, ready to go?
Well, okay. I have one that is like a little bit of a, it's very on brand for me because it's very, very analog and it's also late. But it's also, it also feels like a little bit of a showing my hand a bit, because as Adrienne knows, and as some of our listeners already know, I've been going down this rabbit hole around internet and technology and the future and and how social media and a lot of the digital frameworks that we have accepted for the last couple of decades are really, really destructive. So I've been reading the work of this particular technologist named Jaron Lanier, who is was one of the creators of virtual reality technology. Ooh. And he is one of the things that's been interesting about reading his work is that he is very, very much a self-proclaimed capitalist. And so it's been kind of an interesting journey reading his work as someone who's explicitly not a capitalist. Yeah. And even that actually has been so revealing to me of how polarized our political environment is that for me, it feels like a reach to be like, wow, I'm reading the work of someone who's a capitalist. Right. Can I even tell anybody that I'm reading the work of a capitalist? You know, it's like, oh my God, wow, what a world we live in right now. But anyway, the one that I'm reading, the work of his that I'm reading right now is You Are Not a Gadget, which actually I think came out in 2005 or something. So this is what I mean, Yaba. This is what I mean when I say I'm always late to the party.
Decades.
But sometimes over a decade. But I'm loving what I'm learning about right now. And I feel like I know the way my mind works. And so there's something that's happening on a meta scale or there's something that's happening that's more cosmic that's causing me to go down this rabbit hole. And I don't know what I'm going to come out with.
Yummy.
But there's a reason for it. But anyway, I wanted to share this really beautiful quote from the book that I just read last night. That says, "The plausibility of our human world, the fact that the buildings don't all fall down and you can eat unpoisoned food that someone grew, is immediate palpable evidence of an ocean of goodwill and good behavior from almost everyone, living or dead. We are bathed in what can be called love.
Aww, tender.
And it's like such an optimistic view of like existence. Just like the idea of like, guess what? You're standing inside of a building.
There.
Like the fact that that building is standing and you're inside it in and of itself is evidence that someone wanted you to be safely inside that building.
I love that.
And use their skills to make it safe. There's so much more going on in this book about, you know, the way we're in relationship with technology. But I just wanted to bring forward this like beautifully optimistic way of viewing the world. Like,
yes,
in the midst of the doom that we are experiencing, it's like important to remember that actually we do live, like there is an enormous amount of like desire for life.
Absolutely.
Amongst us.
Oh, we still here. What about for you, Yaba? Is there a top culture standing out for you?
You know, I don't know. I want to play along. But you know, I've just been so busy with this book promo that I feel like I've been missing a lot. You know, I'm always down for the memes. I'm always down for the TikToks, all the challenges. I'm here for all of them. I think I'm just, corny as it sounds, I am very happy to be here experiencing this moment, given the year and the years past that I've had. I'm also very happy to see, for as much as I can be critical of it, you know, quarantine and everybody wanting to be woke has been what it is. But in this moment, I'm watching all these people who I love and admire have books come out and hit the New York Times, and you know, watching them elevate people getting deals, and I'm like, I know that person, and that's dope, and it's about time, and thank you, you know. So like just reparations, I'm here for.
I absolutely love that. Thank you. That's beautiful. Because I know I'm just sitting here like Brittany Cooper.
That's what
Miriam
it is.
Kaba, Sonia Renee Taylor, love you. Like, it just gets like, it's like boom, 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 every direction. You know, this is a really rich time for Black brilliance.
And we're being allowed to say our truth.
Yes. Yeah.
Unfiltered, without folks saying this is too Black.
Yes. Beautiful.
Or this is too much, or white people can't take it. We get to get, because now you want it. So here you go.
Everybody want this. So I have two little short ones. One is this,
I knew you would have two.
You know me, girl. I mean, I have 50, but I'm going to give you two little short ones. One is this incredible book that I have just been like deep diving in, and I got to have a conversation with the author last night. It's called A Handful of Earth, A Handful of Sky. It's by Linnell George, and it's a deep dive into Octavia Butler's Huntington Library archives. And it's the whole book is basically like Octavia's creative process and what you can learn from Octavia's creative process. And the title comes from like once when she was asked, what is science fiction? And she was like, it's a handful of earth, a handful of sky, and everything in between. But it's like nitty gritty. Like you see the list that she made. Here's what I have. Here's what I need. Here's how I'm going to do the budget. Here's what I'm manifesting. Like, these are my core practices. These are core items that were in the archives that the whole book is organized around, these items. This is how she grieved when her library burned down. Like, it's just intimate, beautiful. Like, I think anyone who's a writer, who's a creator, needs to immerse themselves in Octavia's creative culture.
Nice.
So that's one thing. And then the other thing is, I just want to shout out Beyonce and Rihanna and actually Beyonce, Rihanna, and Whitney Miro, because I've been walking around my house. Those three, who are all, to me, they're all perfect in different ways.
Are you wearing onion?
I'm literally wearing onion right now. I'm wearing onion
right now.
Literally. And earlier I was wearing Ivy Park and onion together. So Whitney is probably tired of me because I'm always in her DMs like, you're my favorite person. I think you're the best at wearing your clothes. But I believe that, like, I literally am walking around the house at all times these days wearing Savage by Fenty on some level of my body, and then Onion on some level of my body, and then Ivy Park as a finisher. And I bought some big old Ivy Park mittens. Honey, Adrian and Lingerie is a show not to be missed. I am claiming my lingerie years.
Do those mittens, like, do they go over the jacket?
So they're
arm?
not
like, how does it work?
It's not a logical thing. It's going to hurt your mind if you try to like make it logical. So like today I wore them with this dress, which is clearly a summer dress. And if you see what Beyonce's done with them, she only wears them with a leotard and a scarf. So, you know, it's just do what you want to do, right? I don't find that they go exactly with any jackets yet, but I think they could go with like a cool puffy winter vest. I'm going to keep working on this. But
is this quarantine behavior?
This is quarantine behavior.
Fully.
This is like you are walking around your house. And for me, I'm at that stage of the quarantine where I'm like, I'm tired of only wearing sweatpants every day and then a nice shirt when it's time to be on Zoom. I need to like, these might be my best fashion years and I need to claim them. So I just want to shout out those 3 brilliant Black women because, you know, just knowing, and I get fooled by them, you know, because seeing the clothing on them and then having it show up in my house is, it's different. It is different.
It's totally different.
You know, like every time I'm like, y'all are good salespeople because you're fine. But
you know what?
But I
you
put
know
it
what
on and I feel fine. So.
But the lingerie, I have to say, I have some of that lingerie that Rihanna makes, and that
I haven't gotten into
fire.
I might need to get into it.
I will say this: I have never been a big lingerie person. Like I've always, especially the plus size stuff. I'm always like, it's just a big bra. Like you can't play me. But Megan Thee Stallion partnered with Rihanna on this particular set of things. I mean, I'll send y'all pictures, but I put it on. I was just like, everyone should feel like I feel like right now. This is why lingerie exists, and everyone in this household agreed with me. So,
right, girl.
It was a win, and I just want to shout them out for the Black joy that's happening. So, we have some top culture.
I want to shout out Yaba Blay for being on our show. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
This is absolutely magical.
Thank you for coming out of your nap for this. That was incredible post-nap behavior.
Thank you. Recharged.
Yes. All right. Thanks for listening to our show. We're on Twitter and Instagram at End of the World PC. We're also on Facebook at End of the World Show.
You can make a sustaining donation to our show by visiting our page at patreon.com/endoftheworldshow.
Another incredible thing you can do to help our show sustain itself is to write us a review on Apple Podcasts if you're an iPhone person, or also just like write us a nice email just to our podcast email
we
account.
love the nice emails.
Emails are great too.
How to Survive the End of the World is produced and edited by the very sweet and kind Zach Rosen.
Music for today's show comes from Tunde Alaniran and Mother Cyborg.